The champagne glass shattered against my Valentino dress at the governor's ball, and the entire room went silent. Cold liquid soaked through $2,200 of Italian silk, the acidic sweetness of Dom Perignon mixing with my perfume as it dripped down my chest. Crystal shards glittered against the white fabric like broken stars. The ballroom's chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. 300 of Louisiana's elite, politicians, oil executives, society matriarchs who traced their lineage back to French colonial days, stood frozen in a tableau of shock and anticipation. I didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, my mind did what it always does in moments of crisis. It calculated. Photographic memory, activated like a security system, scanning for threats. Isabella Rousseau stood 3 feet in front of me, empty champagne flute still raised, her diamond bracelet catching light as her hand trembled. Behind her, Margaret Williams with her phone already recording. Vivienne LeBlanc, lips curled in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Catherine Thornton hovering near the orchestra platform. 4 women. Coordinated attack. Military precision disguised as social cruelty. "Oops," Isabella said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet space. "I'm so sorry. I must have slipped." She hadn't slipped. Her Louboutin heels were planted firmly on Italian marble, her stance too balanced, too deliberate. This was theater, carefully choreographed, and I'd just become the unwilling star. "It's fine," I heard myself say, my Jamaican accent thickening slightly the way it always does when I'm controlling rage. "Accidents happen." "Do they?" Margaret's voice cut through the silence like a knife through butter. "Or do gold diggers finally get what's coming to them?" The room inhaled collectively. The orchestra had stopped playing mid-measure, leaving only the ambient hum of the air conditioning and 300 people trying to pretend they weren't watching while simultaneously recording every second. "Come now, darling." Vivienne stepped closer, her Chanel No. 5 overwhelming. "We all know what you are, a third-world opportunist who trapped a lonely businessman. What was it? Fake pregnancy? Or did you just spread your legs at the right moment?" My fingers curled into my palms, nails pressing crescents into skin. I could neutralize all 4 women in 12 seconds. But not here. Not with witnesses and cameras. "Amara." Daejung's voice, low and deadly, came from behind me. I felt him before I saw him, his hand moving to his hip where I knew he kept a Glock 19 beneath his Tom Ford jacket. "Say the word." I didn't turn, didn't acknowledge him beyond the slightest shake of my head. Not here. Not now. Not in front of Senator Victor Lemieux, who I just spotted watching from across the ballroom with an expression that wasn't surprise. That was the detail that made my blood run cold beneath the champagne's chill. Lemieux wasn't shocked. He was satisfied. Like a director watching a particularly good rehearsal. He knew. Somehow he knew. "The dress can be cleaned," I said quietly. "Can your reputation?" Catherine spoke, her voice syrupy with false concern. "Tell me, dear, did they even have running water in whatever village you crawled out of?" Laughter rippled through nearby guests. Nervous, performative, cruel. Phones angled for better shots. Tomorrow's society pages would feast on this moment. I met Catherine's eyes directly. She flinched first. Then I smiled. Not a fake social smile. A real one. The kind that showed teeth. "Thank you for your concern," I said, my voice carrying despite its softness. It must be exhausting, caring so much about other people's relationships, especially when your own husband spends every Thursday evening at the Fairmont with his paralegal. Catherine's face went white. And Isabella? I turned to face her fully, saw something flash across her face that wasn't quite triumph. Fear? Regret? You should choose your friends more carefully. They have a habit of dragging you into situations you can't handle. Isabella's hand still held the champagne flute. It trembled harder now. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you? We'll talk soon, when there are fewer witnesses." The champagne had stopped dripping. My dress clung to my skin like a second layer, cold and uncomfortable and ruined. The entire exchange had lasted maybe 90 seconds. It felt like hours. I turned without waiting for a response. The crowd parted like water, guests stepping back as if I might contaminate them. Daejung fell into step beside me, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "Don't," I murmured in Korean. "Not yet." "They disrespected you in public." "They thought they did. There's a difference." Every step toward the exit felt like walking through quicksand. Heads turned. Whispers followed. I kept my spine straight, my head high, my expression serene. Let them see a humiliated woman walking away in defeat. Let them think they'd won. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was my mind cataloging every face that had laughed, every phone that had recorded, every guest who'd watched without intervening. I was building a list, an accounting of debts that would soon come due. Because what those women didn't know, what this entire room full of Louisiana's so-called elite didn't understand, was that they just signed their own death warrants. And their husbands. The doorman opened the exit without meeting my eyes. Cool November air hit my wet dress, raising goosebumps. Behind us, the ballroom slowly returned to life. Conversations resuming, orchestra starting again, the machine of high society grinding forward as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something deliberate and calculated and far more dangerous than simple social cruelty. Isabella's hand had trembled. Senator Lemieux had watched with satisfaction. The attack had been too coordinated, too public, too confident. Someone had orchestrated this moment, had weaponized those four women like pawns on a chessboard. Someone knew who I really was beneath the designer dresses and charity galas. Someone knew I wasn't just Daijun Kang's quiet wife, and they just declared war in the most public way possible. Our driver pulled the Mercedes up to the curb. Daejung opened my door, his hand gentle despite the violence radiating from him. I slid into leather seats, the champagne immediately staining the upholstery. "I'll kill them," Daejung said quietly as the car pulled away. "All of them. Tonight." No. I reached for my phone, because this wasn't about humiliation. This was a test. A test of what? Of whether I'd break character, whether I'd reveal what I really am when pushed. My fingers moved across the screen, accessing files. Isabella Rousseau. I've known her for 6 months, or I thought I did. I pulled up her background. Trust fund baby, no family, moved from Atlanta 8 months ago. Except now, looking closer, I saw inconsistencies. Her Atlanta address didn't exist. Her charity work always positioned her near our operations. "She's not who she claims," I said. "The entire friendship was a setup." "Then let me end it." "Not yet. Because if Isabella isn't real, then everything about tonight was planned by someone with resources and patience. Someone who's been watching us for months." The car turned onto Lake Pontchartrain Boulevard. Our mansion rose in the distance, lights blazing across windows that overlooked dark water. But I wondered if anywhere was truly safe. Our shipment was arriving in 72 hours. $12 million that would cement our control over New Orleans. If someone knew enough to engineer tonight, they knew about the shipment. I stared out at the dark water, my reflection ghostly in the window glass. Champagne-soaked dress, smeared makeup, the image of a defeated woman. But that woman was a lie. Always had been. To understand why this moment changed everything, you need to know what I was before that champagne hit my skin, and what I became after. Let me take you back 3 hours earlier, to when I still believed I was in control. 3 hours earlier, I stood in front of my vanity mirror, selecting which version of myself to wear to the governor's ball. The emerald Cartier earrings? Too ostentatious. The diamond tennis bracelet? Safe, predictable, exactly what a trophy wife would choose. I reached for the pearl choker instead. Classic, understated, the kind of jewelry that whispered old money rather than screaming new wealth. Perfect for a woman who wanted to blend into the background of Louisiana high society. Behind me, hidden behind a false panel in my walk-in closet, my laptop screen glowed with encrypted manifests. Container 4721B. Arrival, 72 hours. Contents, officially listed as automotive parts from Busan. Actual contents, $12 million in merchandise that would cement our control over the New Orleans waterfront for the next 5 years. I fastened the pearls around my neck with one hand, while my eyes tracked shipping routes on the reflection in my mirror. The container would dock at Pier 17, be processed through our import company by Saturday morning, and disappear into the city's distribution network by Sunday night. 3 days. 72 hours of vulnerability where everything we built could unravel if someone intercepted the shipment. "You're thinking too loud." Daejung's voice came from the doorway. He'd already changed into his tuxedo, looking every inch the mysterious businessman the society pages love to speculate about. "I can hear the calculations from here." "The route looks clean," I said, adjusting the pearls. "But I want additional security at the warehouse, double the usual." "You think there's a problem?" I think there's always a problem. We just don't know which one yet. This was our dynamic, the secret that no one outside these walls understood. In public, Daejung was the face of our organization, the enforcer, the businessman, the one who gave orders. In private, he was my sounding board, my executor, the man who turned my strategies into reality. Every major decision flowed through me first. Every territorial expansion, every negotiation, every elimination. The world saw a quiet Jamaican wife who spent her days shopping on Magazine Street and organizing charity galas in the Garden District. They had no idea those shopping trips were cover for meeting contacts, that those charity events positioned me next to the politicians and businessmen who controlled the city's infrastructure. The society pages called me Daejung Kang's stunning Jamaican wife, as if my only value was decorative. I'd spent 5 years building that facade, brick by careful brick. Let them underestimate me. Let them think I was arm candy, a pretty accent on a powerful man's life. While they dismissed me, I was architecting an empire from the shadows. There's something else, Daejung said, stepping into the room. The Jefferson Parish contract. Santoro's people are pushing back on the new terms. I turned from the mirror, my mind already working through the problem. Santoro's leverage is his political connections. But his cousin, the one on the zoning board, has a gambling problem. $50,000 in debt to the casino on Canal Street. So we buy the debt. We buy the debt. We own the cousin. We own Santoro's leverage. I smiled. He'll accept the new terms by Monday. Daejung shook his head with something between admiration and amusement. 10 seconds. That's all you need. It's not intelligence. It's just paying attention to details everyone else ignores. I returned to my vanity, reaching for my makeup bag. Foundation first, covering the small scar on my left temple from a fight in Kingston when I was 16, a reminder of a past I'd worked hard to bury. As I blended the concealer, I mentally calculated container weights, bribes for dock inspectors, timing windows for the transfer crews. 12 million divided by 3 distribution points. 4 million per location. 30% to Seoul for Daejung's family's backing. 20% to our political protection fund. 50% retained for expansion into Baton Rouge territory next quarter. The numbers flowed through my mind as naturally as breathing, organizing themselves into neat columns of profit and risk. Then, without warning, a wave of nausea hit me. I gripped the edge of the vanity, my vision swimming slightly. The room tilted. Daejung was beside me instantly, his hand on my shoulder. Amara, what's wrong? Nothing, just stress. I forced myself to breathe slowly, waiting for the sensation to pass. The shipment, the expansion, all of it. I'm fine. But the nausea lingered, a queasy wrongness in my stomach that I couldn't quite shake. I'd been feeling off for the past week, fatigue, occasional dizziness, this strange sensitivity to smells. I'd attributed it all to the pressure of managing our largest shipment yet. Stress manifested physically. That was all this was. Maybe we should stay home, Daejung suggested. No. I straightened, applying lipstick with a steady hand despite the lingering discomfort. The governor's ball is where we need to be seen. Senator Lemieux will be there, and I want to read him face to face. He's been too quiet lately. Victor Lemieux, Louisiana state senator, law and order politician, the kind of man who built his career on being tough on crime while taking bribes from everyone, including us. For 5 years, he'd maintained a careful neutrality toward our operations. We paid him well enough to look the other way, but not so much that we owned him. A delicate balance. But lately, something had shifted. His payments continued, but his eyes had changed. I'd noticed it at last month's charity auction. The way he watched me a moment too long, studied me with an intensity that went beyond casual observation. You're worried about Lemieux, Daejung said, reading me the way only he could. I'm always worried about politicians. They're more dangerous than criminals because they believe their own lies. I finished my makeup and stood, smoothing down the black Valentino gown I'd selected specifically for tonight. Elegant, expensive, forgettable. The perfect costume for a woman who wanted to be seen without being noticed. Daejung offered his arm. Ready? Always. The drive to the Grand Marquis Hotel took 20 minutes through New Orleans evening traffic. I spent it reviewing mental dossiers on everyone who would be at the ball. Isabella Rousseau would be there, my friend of 6 months, the woman I'd met at a charity auction and gradually brought into my social circle. She'd been perfect. wealthy enough to understand our world, but vapid enough not to ask uncomfortable questions. Or so I thought. When we arrived and I spotted her across the ballroom, something immediately felt wrong. Isabella stood near the bar, champagne glass in hand, but her usual easy smile was strained. Her eyes kept darting towards Senator Lemieux, who stood across the room in conversation with the lieutenant governor. There was a tension in her shoulders I'd never seen before, a nervousness that didn't match the casual elegance of the event. I made a mental note to pull her aside later to ask if everything was all right. But then Dai Jung was introducing me to someone new, and I was smiling and playing my role, and the moment passed. Other details should have warned me. The waiter who refilled my champagne glass 3 times in 15 minutes, always hovering just within earshot of our conversations. Senator Lemieux's prolonged stare, when he thought I wasn't looking, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Isabella's nervous energy as she approached me, her laugh too bright, her questions about our evening plans too specific. But I missed them all. I was so confident in my control, so certain that my facade was impenetrable, that I didn't see the trap closing around me until it was too late. If this opening already has you hooked, like the video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. These stories reach people everywhere, and I want to know where you are. The attack came exactly 23 minutes after we arrived. I know because I've replayed those minutes 10,000 times since, searching for the moment I could have prevented everything that followed. 23 minutes into the governor's ball, Isabella Rousseau walked toward me with a champagne glass in her hand, and I knew something was wrong. Her fingers trembled. Just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but I'd spent years reading body language as a survival skill. That tremor wasn't nervousness about spilling champagne. It was the shake of someone about to do something they didn't want to do. Something they'd been ordered to do. I should have trusted that instinct. Should have stepped back, created distance, found an excuse to move away. But 6 months of carefully cultivated friendship made me hesitate. Isabella and I had spent dozens of afternoons together, charity planning sessions, wine tastings, shopping trips on Magazine Street. I'd vetted her background, found her harmless, and allowed her into the carefully constructed world of my public life. That hesitation cost me everything. Amar Isabella's voice was too bright, too loud. I've been looking everywhere for you. She closed the distance between us faster than a casual approach warranted. 3 steps. 2. 1. Her champagne glass tilted forward, and I saw it happening in slow motion. The golden liquid arcing through the air, droplets catching light from the chandelier above. The glass shattered against my Valentino dress. Cold champagne soaked through silk, the shock of it stealing my breath for a half second before training kicked in. My mind fractured into 2 simultaneous processes, the public face that showed nothing, and the tactical assessment that cataloged every detail. Isabella's hand still trembled. Her eyes darted left toward someone I couldn't see yet. Her stance was defensive, weight on her back foot, ready to retreat. Oops. The word came out wrong, rehearsed. I'm so sorry. I must have slipped. No, you didn't, I thought. Your heels are planted. Your balance is perfect. This was deliberate. Behind her, 3 more women materialized like pieces on a chessboard moving into position. Margaret Williams approached from my left, phone already raised and recording. Vivienne LeBlanc closed in from my right, her smile sharp as broken glass. Catherine Thornton blocked the nearest exit route, cutting off my retreat. 4 women. Coordinated positioning. Practiced timing. This wasn't social cruelty. This was a tactical operation. It's fine, I heard myself say, forcing my voice to stay level despite the champagne dripping down my chest. Accidents happen. My Jamaican accent thickened slightly. It always does when I'm controlling rage. But I kept my hands loose at my sides, my posture non-threatening. Every instinct screamed at me to act, to defend, to dominate. But not here. Not with 300 witnesses and dozens of recording phones. Do they? Margaret stepped closer, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. Or do gold diggers finally get what's coming to them? The first rule of interrogation: establish dominance through humiliation. Make the target defensive, reactive, emotional. I'd used the technique myself. Recognizing it didn't make it any less effective. The orchestra had stopped playing. Conversations died mid-sentence. 300 people turned to watch, their faces ranging from shock to poorly concealed glee. Someone's champagne glass clinked against a table. The air conditioning hummed, and in that silence I heard exactly what they wanted, my social execution. Come now, darling. Vivian moved into my personal space, her Chanel 5 deliberately overwhelming. We all know what you are. A third-world opportunist who trapped a lonely businessman. Third world. The casual racism was intentional, designed to provoke a reaction. My hands wanted to curl into fists. My body wanted to step forward, close the distance, demonstrate exactly what this third-world woman could do to entitled socialites who'd never faced real violence. I had 12 different ways to neutralize all 4 women in under 30 seconds. Option 1, sweep Margaret's legs. She's off balance in those heels. Option 2, palm strike to Vivian's solar plexus. She's exposing her center line. Option 3, thrown champagne glass to Catherine's face. She's maintaining too much distance. Option 4, Isabella's trembling hands make her vulnerable to a simple wrist lock. My combat training ran through the scenarios automatically. Muscle memory and tactical thinking fused into instinct. I could see each move, feel each impact, predict each outcome. End this in seconds. Establish dominance. Make them regret every word. But then what? 300 witnesses, dozens of recording phones. My careful facade shattered as decisively as that champagne glass. 5 years of strategic positioning destroyed in 30 seconds of satisfying violence. So I chose silence. What was it? Vivian continued, her voice rising for the audience. Fake pregnancy? Threats? Or did you just spread your legs at the right moment? My nails pressed crescents into my palms. Breathe, count, calculate. Behind me, I felt Daejung's presence before I heard him, his footsteps too fast, too heavy with intent. His hand moved to his hip, where he kept his Glock 19 beneath his Tom Ford jacket. Amara. His voice was barely controlled fury. Say the word. One word. That's all it would take. He'd eliminate all 4 women before security could react. We'd disappear into the New Orleans night before law enforcement arrived, but we'd lose everything else. Our business fronts, our political protection, our carefully maintained position in a city that tolerated our presence only because we stayed invisible. I shook my head fractionally. Not here. Not now. Then I saw him. Senator Victor Lemieux stood 15 feet away near the bar, watching the scene unfold with an expression that made my blood freeze beneath the champagne's chill. Not shock, not disapproval, satisfaction. Like a director watching a particularly excellent performance. He knew. He'd orchestrated this. And he was studying my reaction with the intensity of someone conducting an experiment. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't about social humiliation. This was a test. Someone had penetrated our organization deep enough to suspect I was more than Daejung's decorative wife. This public attack was designed to force a reveal, to see if I'd break character, if I'd demonstrate capabilities that a normal society wife wouldn't possess. If I retaliated with violence, I confirmed their suspicions. If I did nothing, I appeared weak and invited further attacks. Either response played into their hands. So I chose option 3, controlled counterstrike. The dress can be cleaned, I said quietly, then met Catherine's eyes. Though I appreciate your concern about my background, it must be exhausting, caring so much about other people's marriages, especially when your own husband spends every Thursday evening at the Fairmont with his paralegal. Catherine's face drained of color. The crowd's energy shifted, uncertain now. I just demonstrated I knew things I shouldn't know, paid attention to details that a vapid trophy wife would miss. Good, let them wonder. And Isabella. I turned to face her fully, holding her gaze until she flinched. You should choose your friends more carefully. They have a habit of dragging you into situations you can't handle. Her champagne glass trembled so violently I thought it might shatter. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? We'll talk soon, when there are fewer witnesses. I didn't wait for responses. Didn't acknowledge the crowd's whispers, or Margaret's still recording phone, or Senator Lemieux's calculating stare. I simply turned and walked toward the exit, my spine straight, my head high, my wet dress clinging to my body like evidence of defeat. Daejung fell into step beside me, his barely controlled rage radiating like heat. The crowd parted. Someone laughed. Others whispered. Phones tracked my exit like security cameras following a suspect. Let them see what they expected to see, a humiliated woman fleeing in shame. What they couldn't see was my photographic memory working overtime, cataloging every face that had laughed, every phone that had recorded, every person who'd stood by watching. I was building a list, an accounting of debts, a strategy for systematic destruction that would take weeks to execute, but would be absolutely thorough. I let them laugh. I let them think they'd broken me. What I didn't let them see was that I just memorized every single person in that room and started planning their destruction. In the car, Daijung broke the silence with the question I'd been dreading. How long have you been working against me? The question hung in the Mercedes' leather interior like smoke. Daejung's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white. We'd made it 3 blocks from the Grand Marquis Hotel before he finally spoke, and those were the words he chose. Not, are you all right? Not, we'll make them pay. He went straight to the question that mattered, the one that would determine whether we survived the next 72 hours. I'm not, I said quietly, my champagne-soaked dress leaving wet marks on the seat. But someone wants you to think I am. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. I turned to face him, seeing the anger and fear warring in his expression. Pull over. Amara, pull over. Now. He did, jerking the Mercedes to a stop in a parking lot overlooking Lake Pontchartrain. The dark water stretched before us, reflecting city lights like scattered diamonds. Beautiful and deadly, just like everything else in New Orleans. They humiliated you in front of everyone, Daejung said, his voice low and dangerous. In front of Louisiana's elite, in front of politicians who are supposed to fear us. We have to respond. Tonight. Make an example that no one will forget. That's exactly what they want. I don't care what they want. I care that they disrespected my wife. Your wife isn't who they were attacking. I reached for his hand, forcing him to meet my eyes. They were attacking the person they suspect I really am. And our response will tell them if they're right. Understanding dawned slowly across his face, followed by something worse, realization of how much danger we were actually in. I continued before he could interrupt. That attack was too coordinated. 4 women, perfect timing, strategic positioning to block exits. Isabella's approach angle gave me no time to create distance. Margaret's phone was already recording before the champagne hit. Senator Lemieux was positioned exactly where he could observe my reaction without seeming involved. You think Lemieux orchestrated it? I think someone did. And Lemieux knew about it. I pulled my phone from my clutch, fingers moving across the encrypted interface. The question is why? What do they gain from publicly humiliating me? Daejung's tactical mind caught up with mine. Information. They were testing you. Exactly. I pulled up mental files, organizing information the way I'd been trained years ago in Kingston. 3 possibilities. First, rival organization. Someone wants our territory and they're probing for weaknesses. But the attack was too sophisticated, too focused on me specifically. Rivals would have gone after you. Second, law enforcement, FBI, DEA, someone building a case. They bait us into a public retaliation, arrest everyone involved, flip witnesses under pressure. But federal agents don't typically use society wives as assets. Too unpredictable. And third, personal vendetta. Someone from our past who knows who I really am, what I've done, and wants revenge served with maximum psychological damage. The car was silent, except for the hum of the engine and distant sound of water against the seawall. Daejung stared out at the lake, processing scenarios, calculating risks. This was why our partnership worked. We both understood that survival required thinking 3 moves ahead. The shipment, he said finally. 12 million arriving in 72 hours. If someone knows enough to target you specifically, they know about that too. Which means tonight wasn't the attack. It was the setup. I felt the pieces clicking together like a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving. While everyone watches us dealing with social humiliation, someone else moves against the shipment. We're distracted, emotional, possibly making mistakes. So what do? We go home. I analyze everything. Isabella's background, Lemieux's connections, everyone at that ball. And you prepare the security teams. Double the guards at the warehouse, triple check the dock inspections, move up the timeline if possible. Daejung put the car back in gear, pulling onto Lake Pontchartrain Boulevard. And Isabella? Isabella is the key. She was terrified tonight. That trembling wasn't nervousness. It was fear of what she'd been ordered to do. Which means she's not the architect. She's a weapon someone else is wielding. We drove in silence the rest of the way, but it was a different silence now. Not anger, but focus. Not reaction, but strategy. By the time we pulled through the gates of our mansion, we'd both shifted into operational mode. I went straight to my hidden office. Most people who visited our home saw the wine cellar as exactly that: temperature-controlled storage for bottles worth thousands of dollars. What they didn't see was the false panel at the back, biometric lock disguised as a temperature gauge, and the soundproofed room beyond containing everything I needed to run an organization from the shadows. 3 monitors came to life as I entered. Encrypted drives, offshore servers, databases that officially didn't exist. I'd built this infrastructure over 5 years, layer by careful layer, making sure no one could trace it back to me if discovered. Isabella Rousseau's file opened first. On the surface, everything checked out. Trust fund from Atlanta. Moved to New Orleans 8 months ago. Met me at a charity auction 6 months ago. Shared interests in art, wine, philanthropy. Background check had shown nothing concerning, which, in retrospect, should have been the first warning sign. Nobody is that clean. I dug deeper, cross-referencing dates and locations. Her Atlanta address, an apartment complex on Peachtree Street. But property records showed that building had been demolished 18 months ago. Her supposed residence there would have been rubble. Her trust fund traced to Mercantile Securities in Atlanta, except Mercantile Securities had no business license in Georgia. The account numbers led to a shell corporation in Delaware with no actual operations. She'd been a ghost, a carefully constructed identity designed to pass surface-level vetting but fall apart under scrutiny. And I'd been so confident in my screening process that I hadn't looked deep enough. Then I found the photograph. Buried in a society column from 3 years ago, embedded in an article about Louisiana political fundraisers. Senator Victor Lemieux at a campaign event, surrounded by donors and staff. And there, partially obscured by other people, but definitely present, Isabella Rousseau, labeled in the caption as event coordinator, 3 years ago, before she supposedly existed, before her fake Atlanta identity. She'd been in New Orleans, working directly with Lemieux, years before she randomly befriended me. How bad is it? Daejung appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. Bad. I gestured to the screen. Isabella's been playing me for at least 6 months, possibly longer. Her entire identity is fabricated. And she has direct connections to Senator Lemieux going back years. He set down the coffee, leaning over my shoulder to study the photograph. If they know about you, they know everything. The shipments, the operations, the payments to politicians, all of it. The fear in his voice was justified. Our entire operation depended on compartmentalization and deniability. I was the secret no one knew, the strategist hidden behind the facade of trophy wife. If that cover was blown, everything collapsed. We have 72 hours, I said, pulling up shipping manifests. The container arrives Saturday morning. Between now and then, I need to identify who's behind this and what they actually want. And if you can't, then we abort the shipment, take the $12 million loss, and disappear until we figure out who's hunting us. I met his eyes, but I'd rather not lose $12 million and 5 years of positioning if we can avoid it. Daejung nodded, understanding the stakes. I'll coordinate security. You find our enemies. He left, and I turned back to the screens. My champagne-stained dress was still wet against my skin, uncomfortable and cold. I should change, should sleep, should approach this fresh in the morning. Instead, I opened file after file, cross-referencing Isabella's movements with our operational timeline, looking for the exact moment she'd penetrated our security. Hours blurred together. Coffee went cold. Outside my hidden office, the house fell silent as Daejung made encrypted calls to our security teams. I tracked Isabella's 6 months of friendship, seeing now how carefully she'd positioned herself, always asking about my schedule, always curious about Daejung's business trips, always seeming to appear at precisely the right moment to observe our operations. At 4:47 a.m., my encrypted phone buzzed. Unknown number, untraceable routing. The message was simple. Did you enjoy the champagne? That was just the beginning. My hands stilled on the keyboard. Someone was watching, waiting, timing this message for maximum psychological impact. They knew I'd be awake, knew I'd be investigating, wanted me to know they were always one step ahead. I stared at those words until they burned into my vision. That was just the beginning. Morning brought worse news than anonymous threats. Dawn broke over New Orleans in shades of pink and gold, light bleeding across Lake Pontchartrain like a wound. I watched it from my hidden office, still wearing my champagne-stained Valentino dress, my eyes burning from 8 hours of staring at computer screens. The anonymous message mocked me from my phone. "Did you enjoy the champagne?" That was just the beginning. I'd spent the night chasing digital ghosts. Isabella's fabricated identity, Senator Lemieux's political connections, shell corporations that dissolved under scrutiny. Every answer led to 3 new questions. Every thread I pulled unraveled into a dozen more. Then my phone buzzed with a news alert that made my blood go cold. Federal raids target New Orleans import businesses, 3 companies under investigation for financial irregularities. I clicked through to the full article, my photographic memory cataloging details as they loaded. 3 of our front companies, Crescent Import Solutions, Bayou Trade Services, Gulf Coast Logistics, all raided simultaneously at 6 a.m. Federal agents with warrants, assets frozen, records seized. But it was the specific language in the warrant excerpts that triggered my suspicion. The article quoted financial irregularities, including unauthorized wire transfers, totaling $2.3 million in August and September. $2.3 million, August and September. Those were the exact amounts and months of our political protection payments. Information that existed in exactly one place, encrypted files on my laptop with backup copies in our personal safe. My hands moved before my mind fully processed the implications. I left my office, walked through our silent house, descended to the wine cellar. The safe sat behind a temperature-controlled storage rack, fingerprint access, 20-digit combination known only to 3 people. Me, Daejung. His brother in Seoul. I opened it with trembling fingers. At first glance, everything appeared normal. Cash reserves in neat stacks, backup documentation, emergency passports, physical hard drives containing 5 years of operational data. But I'd been trained to look closer, to see details others missed. There, on the safe's internal hinge, a microscopic scratch in the powder coating. Fresh, recent, the kind of mark left by precision tools during a careful opening. And on the bottom shelf, the hard drives weren't quite aligned the way I always left them. Millimeters off, but enough to confirm what I already knew. Someone had accessed this safe. Recently. Using the correct combination, not force. 3 people knew that combination. The realization hit like a physical blow. Either Daejung had betrayed me, or his brother in Seoul had, or someone had extracted the information from one of them through means I didn't want to contemplate. I closed the safe with hands that had started shaking. Climbed the stairs back to the main house. Found Daejung in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, his expression grim. He ended the call when he saw me. "You've seen the news. Federal raids, 3 companies, assets frozen." I kept my voice neutral, watching his face for any sign of deception. How did they know exactly which companies to target? Inside information. Someone gave them our operational structure. Who? The question came out sharper than I intended. If I knew that, they'd already be dead. He moved toward me, but I stepped back instinctively. Hurt flashed across his face. "Amara, what's wrong?" Before I could answer, his phone rang again. He checked the screen and his expression shifted from hurt to horror. "It's Rivera." Our head of security. Daejung answered on speaker. "Tell me." Rivera's voice came through tight with controlled panic. "Boss, we have a situation. Samuel Torres, they just pulled his body from the Mississippi River near the Algiers Point dock." The kitchen tilted slightly. Samuel Torres, our most trusted lieutenant, the man who'd been with us since we first came to New Orleans 5 years ago. Loyal, efficient, ruthless when necessary. "When?" Daejung demanded. "Medical examiner estimates 12 to 18 hours. Execution style, single shot to the back of the head. Professional work. Who else knows? NOPD is keeping it quiet for now, but it'll leak within hours. Boss, this wasn't random. Someone's taking us apart piece by piece." Daejung ended the call. In the silence that followed, I felt the nausea return. The same queasy wrongness from last night, but worse now, stronger. My vision swam. The room's edges blurred. I barely made it to the bathroom before I was sick. When I emerged minutes later, pale and shaking, Daejung was there with water. "You need to see a doctor. I need to figure out who's destroying us." I took the water, forced myself to drink. Samuel wasn't just killed, he was executed. Message sent, and it happened within hours of the ball, which means it was coordinated with the humiliation. The humiliation was a distraction, Daejung said, understanding dawning. While everyone watched you being attacked, someone moved against our actual operations. Federal raids, insider information, our most trusted lieutenant murdered, all within 12 hours. I leaned against the bathroom doorframe, my mind working through scenarios despite the nausea. Someone has penetrated us deeply enough to know our company structures, our personnel, and our security protocols. But who? We've been so careful. That's when the most painful possibility forced itself into my consciousness. The safe had been accessed using the correct combination. Only 3 people knew it. If it wasn't me, that left 2 options. I studied Daejung's face, the man I'd married, trusted, built an empire beside. 5 years of partnership. 5 years of secrets shared in the dark. Could he have betrayed me? Was this elaborate attack actually him positioning to take sole control? No. I knew him. Knew his body language, his tells, his genuine reactions. The horror on his face when Rivera called about Samuel was real. The fear in his eyes when he looked at me was authentic. Which meant the breach came from Seoul. Your brother, I said carefully. When was the last time you spoke with him? Daejung's expression shifted. Why are you asking about Jinho? Because only 3 people know the safe combination, and someone accessed it recently without force. You think my brother? He stopped, processing the accusation. That's impossible. Jinho would never betray family. Then someone got to him. Torture, blackmail, threats against his family. I moved past him toward my office. Either way, we have a breach at the highest level. Amara, wait. He grabbed my arm gently. What aren't you telling me? Everything, I thought. That I don't know if I can trust you. That I'm terrified the father of my unborn child might be the enemy. That I'm about to do something that will either save us or destroy our marriage forever. Nothing, I lied. I just need to work. But I'd already made my decision. In my office, buried in surveillance protocols I'd established years ago as insurance, was a system I'd sworn never to activate. Monitoring software on Daejung's devices, audio pickup in his private spaces, GPS tracking on his vehicles. I'd created it because survival required preparation for every possibility. I'd never used it because trust required faith even in uncertainty. Now I needed answers more than I needed faith. My fingers moved across the keyboard, entering authorization codes, bypassing security protocols, activating systems that would show me everything Daejung did, everywhere he went, everyone he contacted. I needed answers. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I activated surveillance on my own husband. Isabella's unexpected visit that afternoon forced my hand faster than I anticipated. Isabella Rousseau appeared at my door at 2:47 p.m., looking nothing like the polished socialite who'd thrown champagne on me 12 hours earlier. Her mascara had run in black streaks down her cheeks. Her hair hung loose and tangled. Her designer blouse was wrinkled, missing a button. She looked like a woman who'd been crying for hours, or wanted me to think she had. Amara. Her voice broke on my name. Please, I need to talk to you. I'd been monitoring Daejung's movements through the surveillance system I'd activated that morning, watching him coordinate security teams across the city. Now, Isabella stood at my door, trembling and desperate, and every instinct I possessed screamed warning. But I opened the door wider. Come in. She practically collapsed into my foyer, her body shaking with what appeared to be genuine sobs. I led her to the sitting room overlooking the lake, sat her on the cream sofa, and waited. Sometimes the best interrogation technique is simply silence. I'm so sorry, she finally gasped. Last night, the champagne. I never wanted to. They made me do it. Who made you? I don't know their names. Men. Dangerous men. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. They have photos of me, compromising photos with Congressman Bryant. They said if I didn't humiliate you publicly, they'd release them. Destroy my reputation, ruin everything. Congressman Bryant. The name tickled something in my memory, but I couldn't place it immediately. I kept my expression sympathetic, concerned. What kind of photos? The kind that would end me socially. The kind that would prove I'm not the person everyone thinks I am. Her hands twisted in her lap. But that's not even the worst part. After last night, they contacted me again. Told me there's something bigger coming. What do you mean, bigger? Senator Lemieux. She leaned forward, urgency replacing tears. He's planning something catastrophic, an operation targeting your shipment, the one arriving this weekend. They're going to intercept it, seize everything, and use the evidence to destroy you and Daejung. My heart rate didn't change. My expression stayed carefully neutral, but my mind was racing through possibilities. If this was true, we had less than 60 hours before $12 million and 5 years of careful positioning evaporated. If it was false, Isabella was a far better operative than I'd given her credit for. "How do you know this?" I asked. "I overheard them talking, the men who blackmailed me. They work for Lemieux. This whole thing, the humiliation, the timing, everything, it's part of a larger plan to take you down." She grabbed my hands, her grip desperate. "Amara, I'm so scared. If they know I told you, they'll kill me, please. You have to protect me." The performance was flawless. The trembling hands, the tear-streaked face, the carefully calibrated mix of guilt and fear. If I hadn't already discovered her fabricated identity, hadn't found the photo of her with Lemieux from 3 years ago, I might have believed her. Instead, I squeezed her hands reassuringly. "You're safe here. Let me make some calls, arrange protection for you." Relief flooded her face. Thank you so much." "Wait here. I'll be right back." I left her in the sitting room and went to my office, pulling up databases I'd accessed throughout the sleepless night. Congressman Bryant. I searched state and federal records, Louisiana political directories, campaign finance databases. Nothing. No congressman by that name in Louisiana or any neighboring state. The man didn't exist. Isabella's story had just collapsed. I dug deeper into her background, following threads I'd started earlier. Her real identity crystallized like ice forming on water. Birth certificate, Isabella Marie Lemieux, daughter of Victor Lemieux and deceased wife Marie Bordeaux Lemieux. Education, private schools in Baton Rouge, political science degree from Tulane. Employment, various positions in her father's political campaigns and offices. She wasn't an orphan socialite from Atlanta. She was Senator Lemieux's daughter. Had been from the beginning. I pulled up the society column photo from 3 years ago, enhancing the image. Isabella stood beside her father at a campaign fundraiser, labeled as event coordinator. But there were other photos in the archive. Birthday parties, family gatherings, political dinners, a documented relationship spanning decades. 6 months ago, at a charity auction, she'd randomly approached me, complimented my dress, started a conversation about art. We'd exchanged numbers, met for coffee, gradually built what I thought was genuine friendship. Now I saw it for what it was, reconnaissance. Every coffee date had positioned her to observe our operations. Every shopping trip had given her access to my schedule. Every seemingly casual question about how you and Daejung met or what New Orleans was like 5 years ago had been intelligence gathering. I'd been played, completely, thoroughly played. I printed the evidence, photos, birth certificates, the timeline of her infiltration, and returned to the sitting room. Isabella sat exactly where I'd left her, still playing the role of terrified victim. "Let's talk in the garden," I said, more private. She followed me outside to the terrace overlooking Lake Pontchartrain. The afternoon sun glittered on dark water. It would have been beautiful if I wasn't about to confront someone who'd spent 6 months lying to my face. "I know who you are," I said, laying the printed evidence on the patio table. Isabella's eyes flickered to the documents. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, her mask slipped. Then she recovered, reaching for the papers with trembling hands. "I don't understand." "Yes, you do. Isabella Marie Lemieux. Senator Victor Lemieux's daughter. The orphan socialite from Atlanta never existed." Her hands stilled on the documents. The trembling stopped. When she looked up at me, her tears had vanished like they'd never been there at all. Her posture straightened. Her voice, when she spoke, carried none of the desperate fear from moments ago. "Well," she smiled, cold and sharp. "I suppose we're done pretending then." The transformation was complete. Gone was the frightened woman who'd collapsed in my foyer. In her place stood someone calculating, controlled, dangerous. This story is for people who understand that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. 5 years. Since you and your husband came to New Orleans and murdered my brother." She pulled a phone from her pocket, swiping through photos before turning the screen toward me. "Remember him?" The photo showed a crime scene. A young man, mid-20s, lying in an alley off Bourbon Street. Blood pooled beneath his body. The image was dated 5 years ago, the exact week Daejung and I had arrived in New Orleans and begun eliminating competition. "His name was Thomas Lemieux," Isabella continued, her voice hard as steel. "My baby brother. He ran a small operation in the French Quarter, nothing that should have threatened you, but you killed him anyway because he was in your way. Isabella, don't. She held up a hand. I don't want your excuses or justifications. I want what you took from me. My brother ran this city before you came. You and your husband murdered him. Now it's my turn. She pulled out more documents, financial records, shipping manifests, photographs of our operations spanning 5 years. Evidence I recognized because it had come from our safe, the one only 3 people could access. $50 million, she said. Blood money for my brother's life. Plus complete surrender of all New Orleans territory. You leave. You never come back. And if I refuse, then every piece of evidence I've collected over 6 months goes to the FBI. Federal charges, RICO prosecution, life sentences for you and Daejung both. She checked her watch. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, I make the delivery. You've been working with your father this whole time. My father doesn't know I'm alive. The admission came with a bitter smile. He thinks I died in a car accident 4 years ago. Closed casket funeral. Very tragic. But I survived, changed my identity, and spent every day since planning how to destroy the people who murdered my brother. She gathered her documents, preparing to leave. 48 hours, Amara. Choose wisely. She walked away, leaving me with a choice no strategist ever wants to face. Pay everything we've built or lose everything we have. But there was one thing Isabella didn't know. I needed to tell her something about that night 5 years ago, something that would change everything. I had 48 hours. I used the first 12 to make an impossible decision. I made my decision at dawn, watching the sun rise over Lake Pontchartrain while calculating the cost of survival. $50 million. Everything we'd accumulated over 5 years of strategic positioning, brutal negotiations, and careful investments. Isabella wanted it in bearer bonds, untraceable, irreversible, the kind of payment that couldn't be taken back once delivered. The rational part of my mind screamed that this was extortion, that paying would only invite more demands, that showing weakness now meant we'd be targeted forever. But another part, quieter, newer, insistent, whispered that some things mattered more than money or territory or pride. I just didn't know yet what those things were. You're actually going to pay her, Daejung said from the doorway. Not a question, an observation. I'm going to buy us time. I didn't turn from the window. 48 hours isn't enough to mount a proper defense. But if I meet her demands, we can regroup, investigate, find leverage. Or she takes the money and delivers the evidence to the FBI anyway. That's a risk. It's suicide. He moved closer, his reflection appearing in the window beside mine. We should disappear. Leave New Orleans tonight. Start over somewhere they can't find us. And abandon the shipment? Lose $12 million on top of the $50 we're paying Isabella? Better than losing our lives. Maybe he was right. Maybe running was the smart play. But I'd spent my entire existence running from one danger to another, Kingston to Seoul to New Orleans. And I was tired of it. Tired of building something only to watch it collapse. Tired of starting over. I'm meeting her, I said. Tomorrow night, abandoned sugar refinery outside Thibodeau. Neutral ground, no witnesses. Daejung's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He knew better than to argue once I'd made a decision. I'm coming with you. No, if this goes wrong, someone needs to survive to rebuild. I finally turned to face him. Promise me. If I don't come back, you get out. Start fresh. Forget New Orleans. Amara, promise me. He pulled me close, his arms solid and warm and safe. For a moment, I let myself believe we'd survive this, that we'd find a way through the trap Isabella had laid, emerge on the other side stronger and wiser. Then I felt the nausea again, that now familiar queasy wrongness, and remembered I needed to know for certain. The next morning, I stood in our bathroom holding a pregnancy test with shaking hands. 2 pink lines, clear, unmistakable, positive. I'd suspected for days. The nausea, the fatigue, the sensitivity to smells that made my morning coffee unbearable. But suspecting and knowing were different things. Suspecting left room for denial. Knowing demanded action. 8 weeks, according to the test's digital estimation. 8 weeks of cells dividing and organizing into something that would eventually become a person. My child. Daejung's child. A life that depended entirely on decisions I made in the next 48 hours. The timing was catastrophic. Federal raids, murder, betrayal, a $50 million extortion scheme. And now in the midst of everything falling apart, I was pregnant. Every choice I made now affected not just me and Daejung, but this tiny cluster of cells that didn't yet know it existed. If I fought Isabella and lost, my child died with me. If I ran and got caught, my child would be born in a federal prison. If I paid and Isabella took the money anyway, my child would inherit nothing but debts and enemies. I couldn't tell Daejung. Not yet. Not until I knew whether the surveillance I'd activated on him revealed betrayal or confirmed his loyalty. The man I loved might be the father of my child or the architect of my destruction, and I wouldn't know which until after I'd already walked into Isabella's trap. So I made my preparations alone. $50 million in bearer bonds, arranged through offshore accounts that would take federal investigators months to trace. A Glock 19 in a shoulder holster beneath my jacket. A backup knife strapped to my thigh. An emergency phone with a single encrypted number programmed in. And a sealed envelope delivered to my lawyer with instructions. If I don't return by Sunday morning, give this to Daejung Kang. The envelope contained everything: offshore account numbers, contact lists, evidence of our operations, and a letter explaining the pregnancy test currently hidden in my bathroom drawer. The abandoned sugar refinery sat 30 miles outside New Orleans, swallowed by Louisiana swampland like the industrial corpse it was. Rusting machinery jutted from stagnant water. Broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets. Moss hung from corroded metal beams, nature reclaiming what humans had abandoned. Perfect place for an ambush. I arrived at sunset, parking my car on crumbling asphalt and walking the final 100 yards on foot. The air smelled of decay and standing water. Cicadas screamed from the tree line. Something splashed in the swamp. Alligator or snake or something worse. Isabella appeared exactly on time, emerging from the refinery's main building with 4 armed men flanking her. Professional muscle, ex-military by their bearing, weapons held with casual competence that suggested extensive training. "You came alone," she called across the open ground between us. "Smart." "I came to end this." I raised the aluminum briefcase containing the bearer bonds. $50 million, as agreed. We met in the center of the space, between rusting vats and collapsed catwalks. Isabella's men maintained a perimeter, weapons visible but not raised. Professional. Disciplined. Far more sophisticated than a revenge-driven daughter should have access to. That should have been my second warning. The first was the absolute silence. No birds, no insects, just oppressive quiet that suggested something was very wrong. Isabella opened the briefcase, inspecting the bonds with a practiced eye. She pulled out a portable scanner verifying authenticity. After 3 minutes, she nodded. "They're legitimate." She closed the briefcase, looking at me with something that might have been respect. "You actually did it? Our business is concluded. You have your payment. I want your evidence files destroyed." "About that." Isabella's expression shifted. The professional mask slipped, revealing rage that had been simmering beneath the surface for 5 years. "I don't want your money, Amara. I want you dead." The briefcase hit the ground. Her men raised their weapons. And I understood, in the half-second before gunfire erupted, that I'd walked into a trap far more complex than simple extortion. Muzzle flashes lit the twilight. Bullets sparked off metal. I dropped and rolled, my combat training overriding conscious thought. The Glock appeared in my hand. I didn't remember drawing it, but muscle memory had taken over. Then I heard it. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." They came from everywhere. SWAT teams emerging from the swamp, the building, vehicles I hadn't seen. Someone had tipped them off. Someone had orchestrated this entire meeting to catch me in a transaction with armed criminals while carrying illegal bearer bonds. Isabella's men opened fire on the federal agents. The agents returned fire. I was trapped in the middle, bullets cutting through air where I'd been standing seconds before. My Jamaican and Korean training fused into pure survival instinct. I moved like water, flowing between obstacles, using Isabella's men as shields, exploiting gaps in the federal perimeter. A mercenary turned toward me. I struck his wrist. His weapon clattered away. Knee to solar plexus dropped him gasping. Another raised his gun. I closed the distance faster than he could fire. Knife appearing from my thigh holster. Precise cut to his forearm nerves rendered his trigger finger useless. Then pain exploded in my left shoulder. The bullet hit like a hammer blow, spinning me sideways into a rusted support beam. Blood bloomed hot across my jacket. The world tilted. I forced myself to move, to run, to reach the swamp's edge where darkness offered cover. I crashed through undergrowth, splashed into fetid water, pushed deeper into the bayou as gunfire echoed behind me. My phone was in my hand. When had I pulled it out? Daejung's number on the screen. He answered on the first ring. Amara, where are you? I'm pregnant. The words came out in gasps, pain and panic stripping away pretense. 8 weeks. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. If I don't make it. Gunfire erupted somewhere close. A bullet struck water near my head. The phone flew from my hand, lost in the murky swamp. I ran deeper into the darkness, bleeding and alone, while federal agents and Isabella's mercenaries hunted me through the Louisiana night. I was bleeding, alone in a swamp, with federal agents and assassins hunting me. And now my face would be on every law enforcement database in Louisiana. I'd just become the most wanted woman in the state. The bayou taught me something that night. When you lose everything, you discover what you're truly made of. The Louisiana bayou swallowed me whole. I moved through black water thick with algae, my wounded shoulder screaming with each movement. Behind me, flashlight beams cut through darkness like searchlights hunting prey. Voices called coordinates. Dogs barked. Helicopters thundered overhead, their spotlights turning night into day wherever they touched. I went deeper. The water rose to my chest, then my neck. Blood from my shoulder wound left a trail I couldn't hide. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. The pregnancy nausea mixed with blood loss and shock until I couldn't tell which sensation was which. But I kept moving, because stopping meant death. Kingston had taught me that. When I was 14, running through the trench with men twice my size hunting me, my grandmother's voice had echoed in my head. "Ya na stop till dem sian find ya. Na stop till ya safe." So I didn't stop. 2 hours into my flight, I found what I'd been searching for. A fishing shack so old and overgrown it looked like part of the swamp itself. I'd discovered it 3 years ago during a reconnaissance mission, filed the location away as insurance I hoped never to use. Now it was the only thing between me and capture. The door hung crooked on rusted hinges. Inside smelled of mold and rot and stagnant water. But in the back corner, hidden beneath floorboards I'd loosened years ago, was a waterproof cache containing everything I needed to survive. First aid supplies, clean water, protein bars, encrypted laptop, burner phones, cash, and a loaded Beretta. I collapsed onto the wooden floor, my body finally acknowledging the damage it had sustained. The bullet had passed through my shoulder. Clean exit wound, no bone damage, but bleeding heavily. I needed to treat it before infection set in. My hands shook as I opened the first aid kit. Antiseptic, gauze, surgical tape. I'd done this before, patched myself up in worse conditions with fewer supplies. But I'd never been pregnant before. Never had to worry that shock or infection might harm more than just me. I cleaned the wound with antiseptic, biting down on a piece of leather to muffle my screams. Packed it with gauze. Wrapped it tight enough to slow the bleeding, but not so tight it cut off circulation. Professional field medicine learned in Kingston's most dangerous neighborhoods, where hospitals asked too many questions and survival meant being your own doctor. When it was done, I sat in the darkness, listening to helicopters circle overhead, and finally let myself acknowledge the truth. I was pregnant, wounded, hunted by federal agents and Isabella's mercenaries, and completely, utterly alone. My hand moved to my stomach, resting there with a gentleness I rarely allowed myself. "I don't know if you can hear me," I whispered to the 8-week cluster of cells that would eventually become my child. "But I'm going to protect you. Whatever it takes. Whatever I have to do, you're going to survive this." The promise felt both sacred and impossible. I pulled out one of the burner phones, its screen glowing in the darkness. News alerts loaded slowly through the limited signal. Armed and dangerous woman wanted in federal agent assault. My photo, clearly taken from tonight's ambush, stared back at me. Amara Kingston Kang, 32, wanted in connection with armed assault on federal officers and murder of Louisiana Lieutenant Samuel Torres. They'd connected me to Samuel's death. Isabella's work, no doubt. Framed me for everything. Turned me into a fugitive. Forced me to run while she dismantled what remained of our organization. Another headline. Businessman Daejung Kang issues statement regarding wife's alleged crimes. I clicked through to the video with hands that had started trembling again. Daejung stood before a cluster of microphones, his expression carefully neutral. "I am cooperating fully with federal investigators. My wife's alleged actions are her own. I condemn any violence against law enforcement and hope justice is served appropriately. Each word was a knife, carefully worded to protect the organization, to maintain deniability, to distance himself from my alleged crimes. Exactly what he should say, exactly what I would have told him to say if I'd been there to advise him. But hearing him condemn me, even knowing it was strategy, hurt more than the bullet wound. I was alone. Truly, completely alone. I couldn't contact organization members without exposing them to federal surveillance. Couldn't reach out to allies without putting them at risk. Couldn't trust anyone because I didn't know how deep Isabella's infiltration had gone. So I did what I always did when trapped. I analyzed. The laptop booted slowly, connecting through encrypted networks that bounced my signal across 3 continents. I pulled up everything from the past 48 hours. Federal raid warrants, Isabella's ultimatum, the refinery ambush, news reports. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in chemicals. The federal raid timing had been too perfect. Simultaneous strikes on 3 companies at exactly 6 a.m., suggesting coordination from someone inside law enforcement who knew our structure. But the warrants contained details that hadn't existed in our files. Inflated numbers, fabricated transactions, evidence of crimes we'd never committed. Someone had manufactured evidence, then used legitimate law enforcement to execute raids based on lies. Isabella's ultimatum had given me 48 hours, but the refinery ambush happened in less than 24. She'd never intended to wait, never intended to take the money. The whole ransom demand was theater designed to get me alone, vulnerable, in a location where federal agents could catch me in the act. But who had tipped off the feds? Isabella wouldn't have. She wanted me dead, not arrested, which meant someone else knew about the meeting. Someone who wanted both Isabella and me removed simultaneously. Senator Lemieux. I pulled up his background, searching for connections I'd missed. His political career spanned 30 years, state representative, state senator, powerful committee positions. His voting record showed consistent tough-on-crime stances. His donor list included everyone from oil companies to pharmaceutical manufacturers to real estate developers. And then I found something that didn't fit. 5 years ago, around the time we'd eliminated Thomas Lemieux and taken control of New Orleans territory, Senator Lemieux had filed paperwork with federal witness protection. Not for himself, for a family member whose name was redacted. The paperwork appeared in archived congressional budget documents, buried in testimony about witness protection funding. Someone in Lemieux's family had entered witness protection 5 years ago, around the same time his son allegedly died. I cross-referenced dates, locations, testimony transcripts, found gaps, inconsistencies, references to a successful placement that saved the program from budget cuts. What if Thomas Lemieux hadn't died? What if the body we'd seen was someone else? What if Lemieux had staged his son's death to justify entering witness protection, then used that staged death to manipulate Isabella into seeking revenge? My encrypted email pinged. Unknown sender. No subject preview. Every instinct told me to delete it, to ignore whatever trap this represented. But I was out of options and running out of time. I opened it. The subject line read, "Your husband is lying to you." I almost deleted it. I wish I had. The video attachment took 3 minutes to download. It took 3 seconds to destroy everything I thought I knew. The video file loaded in segments, buffering through the swamp's weak signal. I sat in the darkness of the fishing shack, my wounded shoulder throbbing, watching pixels arrange themselves into an image that would rewrite everything I understood about the past 5 years. Surveillance footage. High quality. Timestamp, 2 weeks ago. Location data embedded in the metadata, somewhere in Northern Virginia, outside Washington, D.C. A man sat at a kitchen table in what appeared to be a modest suburban home. Late 20s, dark hair, strong features. He was reading a newspaper, coffee cup in hand, looking relaxed and alive and completely impossibly familiar. Thomas Lemieux, Isabella's dead brother, the man whose murder 5 years ago had launched everything that followed. Except he wasn't dead. My breath caught. I replayed the video, searching for signs of manipulation, deepfakes, CGI, digital alteration. But my trained eye found nothing. The lighting was natural. The shadows fell correctly. His movements had the organic imperfection of reality rather than the too smooth quality of generated imagery. He was alive, had been alive, this entire time. A second file autoplayed before I could process the first. Audio recording, lower quality, dated 5 years ago. 2 voices, one I recognized immediately. The decoy is in position. Senator Victor Lemieux's voice, younger but unmistakable. You're certain he matches Thomas's general description? Close enough for a closed casket, Senator. An unfamiliar voice, cold and professional. Once we're done, not even family will want to look too close. And my son? Already in witness protection under a new identity. The paperwork's filed as testimony against organized crime. Nobody will connect him to you. Good. The Kangs need to believe they killed him. It's the only way to control the narrative long enough to... Static interrupted, then silence. I replayed it 3 times, my mind refusing to accept what my ears had heard. Lemieux had staged his own son's death, murdered someone else, a decoy, an innocent person whose only crime was resembling Thomas Lemieux, and let Daejung and me believe we'd killed a rival. For 5 years, we'd lived with that blood on our hands. For 5 years, we'd believed we'd eliminated Thomas Lemieux during our takeover of New Orleans territory. But we'd killed no one. Or rather, we'd killed someone. But it was someone Lemieux himself had murdered and positioned for us to find, to photograph, to carry the guilt of. My entire understanding of the past 5 years shattered like that champagne glass at the governor's ball. Our peaceful relationship with Senator Lemieux hadn't been peace. It had been surveillance. He'd studied us, watched us, waited for the perfect moment to weaponize our assumed guilt. Every payment we'd made to ensure his political protection had actually been funding our own destruction. And Isabella. God, Isabella. She didn't know her brother was alive. Her grief over the past years, I'd seen it occasionally in unguarded moments, the shadow that crossed her face when someone mentioned family, had been real. She'd mourned a brother who was living comfortably in witness protection while their father manipulated her rage into a weapon aimed at us. A 3rd file opened automatically. Documentation this time. Witness protection placement records, budget allocations, and tucked within the bureaucratic language, a plan so cold and calculated it made my blood freeze despite the swamp's humid heat. Lemieux hadn't just faked his son's death. He'd done it specifically to create a revenge narrative he could control. Get Thomas into witness protection under the guise of testimony against his father's corruption, legitimate enough to satisfy federal oversight. Let the Kangs take over New Orleans, thinking they'd eliminated competition. Wait 5 years while building a case and positioning Isabella for maximum effect. Then eliminate everyone who knew the truth. The Kangs, Isabella, anyone who could expose the deception. Blame it on gang violence. Consolidate power. Emerge as the hero who'd finally cleaned up New Orleans' organized crime. Final cleanup scheduled. Governor's Ball, Grand Marquis Hotel. The notation was buried in what appeared to be personal calendar entries. The date matched last week, the night everything had started. The public humiliation hadn't been Isabella's idea. It had been her father's, designed to set me and Isabella on a collision course that would end with both of us dead and him politically untouchable. I had to tell her. Had to show her that the brother she'd mourned for 5 years was alive, that her father had weaponized her grief, that everything she thought she knew was a lie built on manipulation and murder. But would she believe me? Risk assessment ran through my mind automatically. Isabella had spent 6 months infiltrating my life, had orchestrated my public humiliation, had tried to kill me at the refinery. Presenting her with evidence that contradicted 5 years of grief and rage could go 2 ways. She'd either recognize the truth and turn against her father, or she'd think I was lying and finish what she'd started. What happens next will test everything you think you understand about revenge, loyalty, and truth. I watched the video of Thomas Lemieux a 4th time, then a 5th, studied every frame, analyzed the metadata, cross-referenced the location data with federal safehouse databases I'd hacked years ago. Everything pointed to legitimacy. This wasn't misinformation or a trap. This was someone inside the witness protection program sending me proof. But who? I traced the email's origin, following digital breadcrumbs through proxy servers and encrypted routing. The trail ended at a government server farm in Virginia, the same complex that housed witness protection communications infrastructure. Someone with high-level access had sent this. Someone who wanted me to know the truth badly enough to violate federal security protocols. Thomas himself? Trying to stop his father from killing his sister? Or someone else within the system who'd recognize Lemieux's plan for what it was? I'd probably never know. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that I now had leverage, the kind that could either save my life or get me killed trying to use it. I pulled out a burner phone, my hands steadier now, despite the pain radiating from my shoulder. I had Isabella's number memorized, one of many details my photographic memory had cataloged during our 6 months of fake friendship. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. "How did you get this number?" Her voice was cold, controlled. No trace of the desperate tears from her performance at my mansion. "I have proof your father lied to you." Silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "Your brother. Thomas. He's alive, has been this whole time. Your father faked his death and put him in witness protection." "That's impossible." "I have video proof. Surveillance footage dated 2 weeks ago. Audio recordings of your father ordering a decoy's murder. Witness protection documentation, all of it." More silence. I could hear her breathing, could imagine her processing the implications, her mind working through scenarios the way mine had moments ago. "If this is a trick," she said finally, her voice carrying a warning I recognized from Kingston streets, "you'll wish you died at that refinery." "It's not a trick. Meet me. Let me show you what your father did." "Why would you do that?" "I tried to kill you. Because your father is playing both of us, and I'd rather face you as an informed enemy than let him eliminate us both while we fight each other." Another pause. Then, "City Park, Sculpture Garden, dawn. Come alone, or I bring enough firepower to level whatever swamp you're hiding in." "Dawn," I agreed. "Just you and me." The line went dead. She'd agreed to meet at dawn in City Park, neutral ground. I had 6 hours to prepare for a conversation that would either save my life or end it. But first, I needed to do something I'd been avoiding. I called Daejung back. The decision to reveal Isabella's brother's existence wasn't just tactical, it was moral. And I needed Daejung's voice to remind me who I wanted to be, not just who I'd been trained to become. His answer on the first ring told me everything about the past 48 hours. "Amara." Daejung's voice cracked when he answered, raw with an emotion I'd never heard from him before. "Thank God. Where are you? Are you safe?" I sat in the fishing shack with my laptop balanced on my knees, my wounded shoulder wrapped in fresh gauze, and felt tears I didn't know I'd been holding back finally break free. "I'm alive. Wounded but stable. I can't tell you where I am. Not over the phone." "The news says you killed a federal agent, that you're armed and dangerous." "It's a lie. All of it. Isabella set me up at the refinery. Federal agents were already there waiting. I barely escaped." Silence stretched between us, filled with everything we hadn't said over the past 48 hours. The surveillance I'd activated on him. The public statement condemning my actions. The distance that had grown between us as betrayal and suspicion poisoned what we'd built together. "I've been in protective custody," he said finally. "FBI brought me in after the refinery. They wanted me to help locate you. They think I know where you'd run." "And do you?" "I gave them 3 false locations in Texas. Bought you maybe 24 hours before they realize I'm lying." He exhaled shakily. "Amara, the calls to Seoul you were tracking." "I know about the surveillance," I interrupted. "I activated it after I found the safe breach. I didn't know if I could trust you." The calls were to my brother. I was arranging emergency extraction for both of us. A cargo ship out of the port of New Orleans, false documentation, safe harbor in Seoul if everything collapsed. His voice dropped. "I've been preparing our escape route for weeks. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what." The relief hit me like a physical force. He hadn't betrayed me. The secret calls weren't conspiracy. They were protection. He'd been preparing to save us both while I'd been suspecting him of destroying us. "I'm pregnant," I said, the words tumbling out before I could reconsider. 8 weeks. "I took the test yesterday morning. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Silence. Then a sound that might have been a sob. He couldn't finish the sentence. "Are you okay? The wound, the stress, the baby?" "I'm okay. We're okay. The bullet went through my shoulder, missed anything vital. But Daejung, everything is so much more complicated now." "Tell me." So I did. Explained the video evidence showing Thomas Lemieux alive in witness protection. The audio recording of Senator Lemieux ordering a decoy's murder. The documentation proving Isabella had been manipulated by her own father for 5 years. The meeting I'd arranged with her at dawn in City Park. That's suicide, Dae-jung said flatly. She tried to kill you 12 hours ago. She tried to kill the woman she thought murdered her brother. But if I can show her the truth, that her father staged the murder, that Thomas is alive, she becomes an ally instead of an enemy. Or she thinks you're lying and finishes what she started. That's the risk. I pulled up the video files on my laptop, checking them one more time. But Lemieux's plan involves eliminating both Isabella and us. If we can turn her against him, we might survive this. And if we can't, then you take that cargo ship to Seoul. Start over. Raise our child away from all of this. Our child. He said it like a prayer, like a promise. Naril midio joyo. Trust me. The Korean slipped out naturally, and I responded in kind, our private language emerging in the moment we needed it most. Me always did, even when me never show it. I always did, even when I didn't show it. Jamaican patois mixed with Korean, the linguistic fusion that represented us. Two people from different worlds who'd built something together in the space between. We planned for the next hour, voices low and urgent. If Isabella could be turned, we needed her testimony against Lemieux to leverage our own immunity deals. Dae-jung would work his federal contacts, prepare the groundwork for potential cooperation agreements. I would handle Isabella, show her the evidence, hope her rage at being manipulated would override her desire for revenge against me. I've already reached out to Lemieux's political rivals, Dae-jung said. Showed them some of the financial discrepancies I found in his campaign funding. They're interested, very interested. If we can prove Thomas is alive, that Lemieux staged his death and committed fraud to access witness protection funds, it destroys him politically before the criminal charges even hit. How soon can they move? 48 hours if they have solid evidence, less if there's media interest. Then we have a window. Small, but it exists. Before ending the call, I copied all the video evidence to multiple secure locations, encrypted cloud storage, physical drives hidden in the fishing shack, a package already addressed to a journalist I'd vetted years ago as insurance. If something happened to me at the City Park meeting, the truth would still surface. Dawn approached with the slow inevitability of a tidal wave. I left the fishing shack as the sky turned from black to gray, moving carefully through the swamp to where I'd hidden a motorcycle 3 years ago as part of my contingency planning. It started on the third try, engine sputtering to life. City Park at dawn was beautiful and empty. Massive oak trees draped with Spanish moss created cathedral-like shadows. The sculpture garden sat at the park's heart, modern art pieces positioned among centuries-old trees like witnesses to a meeting that could change everything. Isabella arrived exactly on time. She wore black tactical gear instead of designer clothes, her hair pulled back severely, a visible weapon on her hip. She'd come prepared for violence, but she'd come alone as promised. We faced each other across 10 feet of manicured grass, two women who'd been friends and enemies and pawns in someone else's game. You have 60 seconds before I call in your location, she said. I held up my phone, video already queued. Watch this first. I pressed play. Thomas Lemieux appeared on the screen, alive and reading his newspaper, completely unaware he was being surveilled. Isabella's face went rigid. Her hand moved toward her weapon, then stopped. This is fake. Keep watching. The audio recording played next. Her father's voice ordering the decoy's murder, discussing witness protection placement. Isabella's breathing changed. Her hands clenched. She reached for my phone, replayed the video herself, studying every detail. I watched her world crumble with each viewing. Denial gave way to confusion. Confusion to recognition. Recognition to soul-crushing realization. She watched it 3 times, and by the third viewing, tears were streaming down her face. How long have you known? She finally asked, her voice breaking. I told her the truth, less than 12 hours, and then I told her what we needed to do next. Isabella and I sat across from each other in a neutral safe house, a rented storage unit converted into a makeshift command center, and the silence between us felt like broken glass. 48 hours ago, she tried to kill me. 12 hours ago, I'd shown her that her brother was alive, and her father had weaponized her grief. Now we were allies, united by Lemieux's manipulation, but separated by 5 years of hatred that couldn't evaporate just because we discovered a common enemy. I don't trust you, she said finally, not looking up from the laptop where she was reviewing the video evidence for the 7th time. Good. I don't trust you either. I adjusted the bandage on my shoulder, the wound still tender but healing. But we don't need trust. We just need a common goal. Destroying my father. Surviving him. I corrected. Destruction is just the means to that end. Isabella's fingers stilled on the keyboard. The internal conflict played across her face like a film. Duty to family versus duty to truth. The daughter she'd been versus the woman she'd become. Everything she'd believed about her identity was built on the foundation of her brother's death. Now that foundation had crumbled, and she was scrambling to figure out who she was without it. If I do this, she said slowly, I lose everything. My father goes to prison. My family name becomes synonymous with corruption. I become the daughter who betrayed her own blood. Or you become the woman who chose truth over loyalty to a man who murdered an innocent person and let you mourn a lie for 5 years. I leaned forward. Isabella, your father put your name on an elimination list. He was going to kill you after he killed me. You're not betraying him. You're surviving him. She pulled up a different file on her laptop, one I hadn't seen before. Financial records, offshore accounts, communication logs. I've been collecting evidence against my father for 3 years, she admitted. Ever since I started suspecting his political funding didn't match his declared income. I was going to use it to pressure him into helping me destroy you. Now we use it to destroy him instead. The strategic planning took most of the first day. We needed to confront Lemieux publicly, with enough witnesses that he couldn't simply make us disappear. The location chose itself, the Grand Marquis Hotel ballroom, where this had all started with a champagne glass and public humiliation. Full circle. Poetic justice. There's a Louisiana Economic Summit in 72 hours, Isabella said, pulling up the event schedule. Every major political figure in the state will be there. Media coverage, federal officials, perfect audience for an exposure. And your brother. We need Thomas there to testify. He's in witness protection. They don't just let people walk out for family reunions. Then we convince them it's not a reunion. It's the only way to stop a corrupt senator from committing multiple murders. The technical challenges emerged as we compiled evidence. The surveillance video of Thomas was formatted for federal systems that civilians couldn't access. The audio recordings needed authentication that would hold up in court. The documentation required cross-referencing with classified witness protection files. We worked side by side for 16 hours straight, barely speaking except to share information. The tension was exhausting. Every moment felt like standing on ice that might crack at any second. Then Isabella found the photograph. It was buried in her father's office files, tucked into a folder labeled Personal, Thomas Memorial. A childhood photo, Isabella and Thomas at a birthday party, maybe 10 and 8 years old, their faces bright with laughter. On the back, in her father's handwriting, My beautiful children, everything I do is for you. She stared at it for 5 full minutes while I watched her commitment to our plan waver. He kept this, she whispered. After everything, he kept it. He also kept this. I pulled up the document I'd been saving for exactly this moment. The cleanup schedule with detailed plans for eliminating threats to Lemieux's operation. Isabella's name appeared in Section 3, timestamp set for 2 days after my planned elimination. Method: staged suicide, depression following friend's death. Her face went white as she read her own death warrant written in cold bureaucratic language by her own father. Everything he does is for himself, I said quietly. The photograph is manipulation. The cleanup plan is truth. The doubt disappeared from her eyes, replaced by something harder, colder, more dangerous. Let's destroy him. Day 2 brought coordination challenges that threatened to derail everything. Dae-jung worked his federal contacts, agents who'd been investigating Lemieux's corruption for years, but lacked sufficient evidence for prosecution. They were interested in Isabella's files, very interested. But they wanted assurances, guarantees, proof that this wasn't a trap. We planned the confrontation like a military operation. Both Isabella and I would wear wires, broadcasting simultaneously to federal agents and Lemieux's political rivals. Everything said would be recorded, witnessed, documented. No deniability. No escape. If he senses the trap, he'll run, Dae-jung warned over our encrypted call. He has resources, offshore accounts, international connections, political allies who owe him favors. Then we make sure he doesn't sense it until it's too late, Isabella said. The midpoint complication came from an unexpected source. Thomas himself. Federal marshals contacted us through Daejung's connections. Thomas had been informed of the plan to extract him temporarily for testimony. His response? Absolute refusal. He'd spent 5 years in witness protection, building a new life, and he had no intention of facing his father again. He thinks Lemieux will kill him the moment they're in the same room, the marshal explained. And honestly, that's not an unreasonable fear. Isabella's face crumbled when she heard. After everything, discovering her brother was alive, planning this confrontation, risking everything, he wouldn't come. "Let me talk to him," she said. The video call took 3 attempts to connect through secure federal channels. When Thomas's face appeared on screen, Isabella made a sound between a sob and a gasp. "Tommy." The childhood nickname slipped out. "It's really you." He looked different, older, harder, wearing 5 years of hiding like armor. But his eyes softened when he saw her. "Bella, God, I thought I'd never see you again. Dad told me you were dead. Showed me photos of your body. Let me mourn you for 5 years. I know, the marshals told me. Bella, I'm so sorry, but I can't. He's going to kill me." She said it flatly, without emotion. "There's a document, a cleanup plan. My name is on it. If you don't help us stop him, I'll be dead within a week." Thomas's face went white. "Show me." She did. Watched him read his father's plan to murder his own daughter, watched the last remnants of familial loyalty die in his eyes. "I'll testify," he said finally. "Whatever you need, I'll be there." Day 3 was execution preparation. Isabella contacted her father. Her performance flawless, the dutiful daughter who'd finally captured the woman who'd supposedly killed her brother. She arranged a meeting at the ballroom, spun a story about wanting closure before turning Amara over to authorities. Lemieux agreed immediately. Too immediately. Added conditions about federal presence, about documented confessions, about legal procedures. He thought he was directing the trap, not walking into one. I wrote letters that night. To my unborn child, explaining choices I'd made before they were born. To Daejung, apologies and love and contingency plans. To my family in Jamaica, secrets I'd kept for 18 years that needed to be revealed if I didn't survive. Isabella found me writing, sat down across from me without speaking. After a long moment, she pulled out her own paper and started writing too. "We're both pawns, aren't we?" she said quietly. "Women manipulated by powerful men who thought we were tools instead of people." "We were pawns," I corrected. "Now we're players." She smiled, small and bitter but real. "I still hate you, you know, for what I thought you did." "I know, but maybe after this you can hate me for who I actually am instead of who your father told you I was." Maybe. The morning of the confrontation arrived with perfect Louisiana weather, clear skies, moderate temperature, the kind of day that made tourists fall in love with New Orleans. The ballroom at the Grand Marquis Hotel, filled with Louisiana's political elite arriving for the economic summit. Isabella and I arrived separately as planned. She wore designer armor, a dress that cost thousands and made her look like the society princess everyone believed she was. I wore surrender, simple clothes, hands visible, body language designed to appear defeated. Federal agents positioned themselves throughout the venue, supposedly there to arrest me, but actually there to witness Lemieux's confession. Political rivals he'd crossed over 3 decades took strategic seats. Media representatives, tipped off by anonymous sources, set up cameras. Then Thomas arrived. He wasn't supposed to be there yet. The plan called for his entrance after Lemieux was in position, after the trap had closed. But federal marshals brought him in early, their schedule accelerated by threats no one had briefed us about. Senator Victor Lemieux walked into the ballroom expecting a private execution. What he found instead was a courtroom with cameras, witnesses, and his son, alive, standing at the center of it all. Time seemed to stop as father and son made eye contact for the first time in 5 years. Senator Victor Lemieux's face cycled through emotions in the span of 3 seconds, shock, rage, calculation, before settling on the political mask he'd perfected over 30 years in office. Thomas. His voice carried across the ballroom, warm and paternal and utterly false. "My God, my son, you're alive." Thomas stood at the center of the room, flanked by federal marshals, and his expression held nothing but cold contempt. "Hello, Dad. Surprised?" "Surprised? I'm overjoyed." Lemieux moved forward, arms outstretched as if for an embrace, but the marshals stepped between them. He pivoted smoothly, addressing the crowd that had gathered, politicians, media, federal agents, all watching with rapt attention. "This is a miracle. My son, who I thought died 5 years ago, returned to me. Whatever's happened, whatever misunderstanding brought him here, I'm just grateful he's safe. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known the truth, hadn't seen the evidence, I might have believed the emotion in his voice was genuine. I stepped forward, phone in hand, and activated the broadcast system Isabella and I had installed overnight. Senator Lemieux, before you continue, you should know that everything being said here is being live-streamed to every major news outlet in Louisiana and recorded by federal agents. His eyes found mine, and for a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. Pure hatred flashed across his face before the politician returned. Mrs. Kang, I'm surprised to see you here, given the warrant for your arrest. I'm sure you are. I connected my phone to the ballroom sound system. I thought everyone should hear something before you spin this reunion into campaign material. The audio recording played through speakers designed for wedding speeches and corporate presentations. Lemieux's voice from 5 years ago, ordering the decoy's murder, discussing witness protection placement, planning the frame that would make Daejung and me believe we'd killed his son. The ballroom went silent, except for that damning recording. Lemieux's composure cracked slightly. That audio is fabricated. Digital manipulation. This woman is desperate, accused of multiple felonies, and she's trying to. There's video, too, Isabella said, stepping forward. Her voice shook, but she held her phone up, showing surveillance footage of Thomas alive 2 weeks ago, and financial records, and witness protection documentation showing you committed fraud to access federal funds. Her father's face transformed when he looked at her. Not anger now, but something more dangerous. Disappointment. Isabella, sweetheart, you don't understand what you're doing. These people murdered your brother. They're manipulating you. Thomas is standing right there. Her voice broke. Alive, while you let me mourn him for 5 years. I did it to protect him, to protect you. I had no choice. You had every choice. Isabella's composure shattered. You could have told me the truth. Instead, you weaponized my grief. Turned me into a tool to destroy people who didn't actually kill anyone. You used me. This was her moment of truth, the choice between family loyalty and justice that would define who she became after this. I watched her gather herself, saw the transformation from manipulated daughter to woman choosing her own path. I'll testify, she said clearly, against you about everything, the fraud, the murder, the manipulation, all of it. Her testimony came slowly, painfully, each word extracted like shrapnel from a wound. She confirmed the 5-year manipulation, her father's lies about Thomas's death, the evidence she'd collected of his corruption, his willingness to sacrifice her for power. Lemieux tried to maintain control. My daughter is clearly traumatized, confused. This woman, he gestured at me, has poisoned her mind with fabricated evidence and conspiracy theories. I request immediate psychological evaluation for Isabella and arrest of Mrs. Kang for what? I interrupted. Exposing the truth? Let's show everyone else what your daughter just learned. I pulled up the document I'd been saving, the cleanup schedule with detailed plans for eliminating threats. The crowd leaned in as I projected it onto the ballroom's presentation screen. Section 3, I said. Isabella Lemieux. Elimination scheduled for 2 days after my planned death. Method, staged suicide, depression following friend's death. Contractor payment, $50,000, already deposited in an offshore account. Isabella's face went white. Even knowing her father was corrupt, seeing documentary evidence that he'd planned her murder destroyed something fundamental in her. You were going to kill me, she whispered. Your own daughter. That document is a fabrication, Lemieux said, but his voice had lost its authority. Anyone with basic computer skills could... I can confirm its authenticity, Thomas said, speaking for the first time beyond his greeting. I saw preliminary versions while I was still in contact with Dad before entering witness protection. He was already planning contingencies for eliminating anyone who knew too much about his operations. He pulled out a tablet, accessing files the federal marshals had provided. I have 5 years of witness protection testimony, detailed accounts of Dad's corruption, names, dates, amounts, everything. The lead FBI agent, who'd been standing silently observing, stepped forward. Senator Lemieux, we need to ask you some questions about... I have Senate immunity, Lemieux interrupted, and powerful friends. You can't touch me based on fabricated evidence from criminals and a confused son who clearly needs psychiatric help. About that. Daejung's voice came from the ballroom entrance. He walked in flanked by Louisiana's Attorney General, a woman whose hatred for Lemieux was legendary in state political circles. Senate immunity applies to federal charges. The Attorney General has jurisdiction over state corruption charges. Murder committed in Louisiana, fraud committed in Louisiana, conspiracy committed in Louisiana. The Attorney General smiled coldly. Senator Lemieux, you're under arrest for first-degree murder, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and about 15 other charges we'll detail at your arraignment. The tide turned in seconds. Federal agents placed Lemieux in handcuffs while he sputtered threats about political connections and legal challenges. His mask had completely disintegrated, leaving only rage and desperation. You'll all regret this, he spat. Every one of you. I'll destroy your careers, your families. You're done, Isabella said quietly. Finally. The lead FBI agent turned to her. Miss Lemieux, we're prepared to offer full immunity in exchange for your cooperation and testimony. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then he turned to me and Daejung. As for you two, the situation is more complicated. We waited while he conferred with other federal agents, while lawyers argued in hushed tones, while our fate hung in balance. Insufficient evidence for major federal charges, he said finally. But your operations in Louisiana are now under intense scrutiny. Every business, every transaction, every associate. We can't prove you committed the crimes Lemieux fabricated, but we know you're not innocent either. What are you offering? Daejung asked. Leave New Orleans permanently. Never return. Never conduct business in Louisiana again. In exchange, we close our investigation and seal the files. And if we refuse, we pursue every minor charge we can make stick. Tax irregularities, business license violations, testimony from competitors about intimidation, nothing that will put you away for life, but enough to destroy you financially through legal fees and lost assets. Daejung looked at me. I placed my hand on my stomach, thinking of the child growing there, the future we needed to protect. We accept exile, I said. As federal agents led Lemieux away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. His lips moved, forming 3 words that only I could see. You owe me. We'd won the battle but lost our kingdom. 3 months later, standing in Seoul with my hand on my growing belly, I finally understood what he meant. Seoul in winter was nothing like New Orleans. I stood on the balcony of Daejung's family compound, 4 months pregnant with my hand resting on the curve of my belly, watching snow fall over a city I was still learning to call home. Behind me, through floor-to-ceiling windows, his mother prepared dinner while his brother argued politics with their father. Normal, domestic, safe. Everything we'd lost. Our mansion overlooking Lake Pontchartrain, businesses we'd built from nothing, a network of contacts and power that had made us untouchable in Louisiana. 5 years of strategic positioning, gone in a single confrontation. Everything we'd gained. This family that welcomed me without judgment, a chance at a life where I didn't constantly calculate threats, and a child who would grow up knowing safety instead of survival. The trade seemed fair. Most days, I even believed it. My phone buzzed with a news alert from America. I'd set up monitoring for specific keywords: Louisiana politics, Senator Lemieux, Isabella Rousseau. The algorithm sent updates I wasn't sure I wanted, but couldn't stop reading. Isabella Lemieux Foundation reaches $5 million funding milestone, read the headline. The article detailed a nonprofit supporting victims of political corruption, named in honor of Thomas Lemieux. Isabella's face appeared in the accompanying photo, standing beside her brother at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. They both looked older, harder, but alive. Senator Victor Lemieux's trial had become Louisiana's biggest political scandal in decades. 37 charges, ranging from murder to fraud to obstruction of justice. The prosecution was seeking life imprisonment. His political allies had abandoned him with the speed of rats fleeing a sinking ship. Thomas, he'd legally changed his name to Daniel now, shedding his father's legacy, had testified for 3 days. His witness protection files, combined with Isabella's evidence and my recordings, had built a case so airtight that Lemieux's lawyers were already negotiating plea deals to avoid trial. My phone rang. Isabella's number. I answered without greeting. I saw you called, she said. Or rather, your monitoring software flagged my foundation's press coverage. Congratulations, $5 million is impressive. It's blood money, donations from politicians who want to distance themselves from my father. Her voice was tired, older somehow, but it'll help people, so I'll take it. Silence stretched between us, filled with everything we'd survived together and everything we'd never be able to forgive. I wanted to kill you, she said finally. At the refinery, at City Park, even at the ballroom, part of me wanted to put a bullet in you and end it. I know. Why did you show me the truth when you could have just eliminated me? You had multiple opportunities. You're clearly capable. I looked out at Seoul's skyline, thinking about the child growing inside me, about the kind of mother I wanted to become. Because I'm going to be a mother. I needed to know I could choose mercy instead of violence, that I was more than what Kingston made me. Kingston, she repeated. You've never talked about Jamaica, about who you were before New Orleans. No, and I won't. Fair enough. We all have ghosts, she paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you survived. I'm glad your child will have a mother, even if that mother is you. Is that your version of forgiveness? It's my version of acknowledgement. We're forever connected by what my father did to both of us. Two women who survived powerful men who thought we were tools instead of people. Isabella, don't. We're not friends. We'll never be friends. But we understand each other. That's enough. She hung up before I could respond. Daejung found me there, staring at the phone, processing the conversation. Everything okay? Isabella called. It was civilized. That's progress, I suppose. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hands resting on my pregnant belly. How are you feeling? Like I'm learning to be a person instead of a strategist. I leaned back against him. Your mother wants to teach me traditional Korean cooking. Your father asked me about Jamaican music. They're treating me like family. You are family. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't calculating threats or planning operations or surviving moment to moment. I was living. Learning Korean phrases from Daejung's nieces. Shopping for baby clothes with his mother. Attending his brother's political fundraisers as a supportive sister-in-law. Normal life. Almost boring. I'd started to believe I could leave the past behind. Then the package arrived. The courier delivered it directly to me, bypassing security with credentials that shouldn't have worked. Jamaican postmark. No return address. My name written in handwriting I recognized from 18 years ago. I opened it alone in our bedroom, hands already shaking before I saw what was inside. A single photograph from 1998, faded with age but still clear enough. Teenage Amara, 14 years old, skinny and fierce, standing with a group of 7 people in Kingston's Trench neighborhood. I recognized every face, knew every name, remembered what we'd done together. All the faces were crossed out in red marker except one, a woman on the far left, the most dangerous person I'd ever known. The note was written in Jamaican patois. One left. She found me. She's coming for you next. Run. My hands trembled, genuine fear. Something I hadn't felt since I was 14, and running for my life through Kingston's most dangerous streets flooded my system. The photograph brought back memories I'd buried, blood and violence and impossible choices made by a child who had to become something harder than human to survive. Daejung walked in. What's that? I shoved the photograph into my pocket, forced my expression neutral. Nothing. Just family photos my cousin sent. You look terrified. Just surprised. I haven't thought about Jamaica in years. The lie tasted bitter. I'd never lied to him before New Orleans fell apart. Now I was lying about the one thing that frightened me more than federal prosecution, or Isabella's vendetta, or Senator Lemieux's revenge. I need some air, I said, moving to the balcony. I burned the photograph in the kitchen sink first, watching my 14-year-old face curl and blacken. Then I went outside, pulled out an encrypted phone I'd kept hidden, and made the call. The voice answered in patois. Me did wonder when you would a call. I thought we had a deal, I said, matching her language. Why is she breaking it now? Because someone paid her more than you did. Real money this time, not promises from a 14-year-old pick-me. She's coming for you. You have a week, maybe less. The line went dead. I stood there with my hand on my pregnant belly, staring at Seoul's skyline, and felt the strategist return. The woman I'd been before Daejung, before New Orleans, before I'd learned to hide behind designer dresses and society galas. The survivor Kingston had forged in blood and desperation. Subscribe if you want to know what happened in Kingston, because that story changes everything you just watched. I thought leaving New Orleans meant leaving my past behind, but some ghosts don't stay buried, and the most dangerous one just found me. I made a second call, this time in English, but with a Jamaican accent thicker than I'd used in years. It's me. After 18 years, I need the favor you promised. She's coming, and this time I have more to lose than my life.